Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick and this is my brother Jordan. We like horror movies and this is the podcast where we talk about them. This episode we're going to be discussing the new film by Rob Zombie, Lords of Salem. We just got back from seeing this new film in the theaters and are anxious to talk to you guys about it. We're also going to be talking about an earlier film of Rob Zombie's, actually I think his first film, yes, House of a Thousand Corpses. And probably talking about some other movies that he's done in his career in general. So we're going to jump right into our review of the new film, Lords of Salem. This is a movie, a very strange movie, a very different movie than what Rob Zombie has done before. But the plot is actually fairly simple. Sherry Moon Zombie, his wife, who appears in all of his films, is the star of this one. She plays a radio DJ and recovering drug addict who...
Just like in Evil Dead. Another one.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Good call. I didn't even make that connection, but... she receives a record at her work mysteriously in the mail, and when she plays this record, she begins to slowly come under some kind of demonic influence connected to the Salem witch trials. And this is all leading up to her becoming the vessel by which Satan's child is born into the world, or something like that, as this movie becomes very surreal as it goes on.
Very much.
Very much so. Again, really different kind of thing for Rob Zombie based on what he's done before. So after that rambling introduction, what did you think of Lords of Salem, Jordan?
I really liked it. It's probably one of his best, which I might not even be saying much, but I really like him as a director, but his last few have kind of trailed off. Mm-hmm. Up in that Halloween 2.
Well, Halloween 2 was the one he did immediately preceding this, and that was not very good.
Kind of a big disappointment, but this one was very good. Very good.
Great. I'm glad to hear you say it because I liked it a lot, too.
I was going to take a guess. I had a feeling that you did.
Yeah, whenever I see a movie with someone, I'm always like, are they liking it? Are they not liking it? Especially if I'm really enjoying it. And it got so strange towards the end. I was like, I don't know if Jordan's gonna respond to this kind of thing. So what did you like about it?
It reminded me. It kind of gave me confidence in Rob Zombie again as a director.
Yes.
It reminded me of this is pretty obvious, but like an old silent film. You know, he's got posters of the Trip to the Moon, the Méliès movie, and he's got all those Republic serials like Commander Cody on the wall, all those old pictures. So
and this is a zombie trope. He very much foregrounds his influences. There's always a lot of clips from old films and
there's always little nice touches in the background, but this one they're actually sort of a point to them.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of. I mean, it set the mood perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Story was kind of all over the place. There wasn't really much of a story.
Mm-hmm.
It was, what I did like what I like about the story in the very end is evil wins and you're kind of okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's it made me think of what if they did a superhero movie where it was all about the villain and the villain takes over the world at the end and kills the hero, and then you can still feel good about that. It's really weird the way the way it balances like that.
Well, why do you think you felt good about evil triumphing at the end of this movie? Spoiler alert.
I don't know. I don't know if maybe I didn't feel good about it, but I kind of feel like it was just well said.
Yes, it was well removed. Well, and one movie I was reminded of while watching this for obvious reasons was Rosemary's Baby, which also has what I think most people would interpret as an ending where evil triumphs, a very cynical ending.
A lot of it is the characters.
Yep.
Sherry Moon is probably the best she's ever been.
She is excellent in this movie. She's in all of his films. She plays very different roles in all of the movies.
She's usually more of a comic relief character.
Well,
a sex pot.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, she's part of the psychotic killer family in House of a Thousand Corpses, and we'll discuss that in a
She's always
bit.
The motherly. She's always the main female.
She's the mother in Halloween. But in this movie, I feel as though she's really like, even if she wasn't Rob Zombie's wife, he may have cast her for this role because she's very good at playing this character. She has the right look for this character.
She's fearless.
She embodies the history of this character. She's the character, unfortunately, sort of disappears kind of in the latter third of the movie as she's taken over by these witches, by this coven.
But there's plenty of other characters that make up for that, I think. The trio, the coven, those ladies, they're really good together.
Yeah, this whole cast
really actually like distinct personalities within a group of three people.
Yes,
they play off each other, and they're older women who don't get roles in Hollywood nowadays. People know that.
Yep.
But it was quite a performance, and the what was he in? He was an author who was tracking down Sherry Moon's family tree line.
Yes.
He was really good.
Yes, everyone's seen him in many movies. Like a lot of Rob Zombie stuff, he really likes working with character actors. And this actor I've seen many, many times in many, many films.
He's not the guy from X-Men.
He played like the scientist guy or politician guy
kind
or
of
whatever
like
it is in X-Men. But yeah, he's excellent in this movie, and I don't know that I've noticed him as an exceptional actor before. But everyone in this movie is terrific, I thought. So, yeah, it really impressed me, this movie.
And it's not just that it's a stark change from what you're used to with Rob Zombie.
Although it is that.
It is, definitely is, but they're all kind of on a different level, and I don't know, it works really well within this environment that I didn't even think that Rob Zombie could create. You know, he's so much more, I don't want to say like almost like a music video director, even though he was a music video director. I mean, that's kind of selling House of a Thousand Corpses short to say that it looks kind of like a music video, but it does in parts. This one is, like I said, like a silent film, like a play. It's like there literally is a play at the end, big scene like that.
Yeah.
It works amazingly. The other thing that I really like is that sometimes stands out in his movies and sometimes doesn't, which is odd because he's a musician, is the music. He even came up with his own little kind of creepy Jaws theme almost. That record that they play by the Lords. I found that really creepy. In the very beginning, even, when there's just that droning sound, I just had a really good feeling about it. And some of his movies, you notice the music in it, and some you don't. He's kind of like a little Tarantino-like, I guess. Or he's like, you can pick out really good music that really sticks with you for specific moments. And that record by the Lords, I think, is really haunting and creepy, and I think that worked really well.
Yeah, I think he uses music really well. Actually, in all of his movies, in this movie in particular. But it's not, I mean, he has
It's good taste, but it doesn't always necessarily match up.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, does that make sense? Like, he picks good songs, whereas Tarantino will, like, marry those two together a lot closer than Rob Zombie does.
Yeah.
Rob Zombie's more hit and miss with that kind of stuff.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at some of his films, but I know...
I think the fact that you don't really remember...
Yeah, although, I mean, having just watched House of a Thousand Corpses, having just rewatched after not having seen it for a while, there were particular ways that he used music in that movie that I really liked. Sometimes deliberately contrasting the kind of music against the kind of scene you're watching. It's a kind of neat effect, I thought.
There's a lot of people, that's like...
Yeah, that's post-Tarantino.
It goes back to like Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah, true.
But you could still do it well.
Yeah. Well, this movie was done well pretty much on every level. So I really think the most important thing for people to keep in mind when watching this movie, if you are familiar with Rob Zombie's previous films, is the shift in style. I think
I thought you were going to say, is the shit.
No, but don't you think so? That this is really a kind of clean break from what he's done before. I don't know that this will be the style he uses going forward.
I kind of hope it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it works.
Well, what I like about Zombie is that he is an evolving filmmaker. My kind of history as a Rob Zombie fan is that I have not been enamored of his first couple of movies. I didn't love House of a Thousand Corpses.
You really didn't like it.
When I originally saw them, I didn't like them. And The Devil's Rejects, I've always said this.
I remember when I first recommended it to you. I remember like I wrote down. I think I emailed you or something. And I said like, I was explaining the movie. I was giving like my whole attack on it or my whole recommendation for it, and I said you pretty much get to see the human anatomy inside and out because people are flattened.
That would be a great
they're
kind of
they're like flattened by a truck. There's people being gutted, beheaded, and like just you see everything. The naked people, so you get that, and I remember your response was, "That sounds interesting."
Yeah,
me and you, we don't always match up on those two.
Well,
I have a think a little more morbid sense.
I mean, and here's kind of my take on Rob Zombie in those earlier films. I've always respected him as a filmmaker because he does have his own vision. He knows how to put together the movie that he has in his head. So these movies, they're not sloppy. They're not like, haphazardly thrown together. Mm-hmm. They just, his aesthetic before this has been very much in the mode of something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Very kind of intense, gritty, in your face, lots of crude, ugly characters doing. And I think the main point is that
you've said before is that like deliberately so.
Deliberately so.
Like it's not a mistake.
But it has not necessarily been pleasurable for me to watch.
Yeah.
That style of filmmaking can be done well, but Zombies movies is always it's like they just dial it back a little bit. I feel like he did take a step in his evolution as a filmmaker with the remake of Halloween, which I don't want to talk too much about in this episode because I've talked about it in at least a couple of previous podcasts. But he did, I feel like, kind of take a step forward with that movie, simply in marrying his style to a pretty solid story structure that already existed in the classic original film. And
a great ending.
Yeah, and it was, up till that time, I felt his best movie. And after I saw it, I thought, Rob Zombie, if he keeps kind of pushing himself, evolving as a film director, he's got the chops, he might make an excellent movie. And when I was watching Lords of Salem as it unfolded, that's kind of how I felt. I was like, this is that movie after the disappointment of Halloween 2. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, maybe I got, ahead of myself a little bit. But no, he's kind of done what I've been wanting to see him do with Lords of Salem, is that he's kind of settled down a little bit. He doesn't have to cram everything that he loves about horror movies into every single frame of the movie. He can kind of strip it back a little bit, slow down the pacing, build a little bit of tension. This movie does not resemble Texas Chainsaw Massacre so much as it resembles the works of Stanley Kubrick, Roman Polanski.
Yeah, there's a lot of shining moments in it.
Yeah,
there's literally like a naked crazy lady in the hallway. It looks directly
and that's kind of another zombie hallmark. He does wear the influences a little bit too much on his sleeve, but I like that this one at least is kind of looking to other influences. Movies like Suspiria.
I wasn't using it as a criticism. I'm just pointing it out. I think it's really effective. They have a lot of naked people in the movie. And
a lot of naked elderly people in this movie.
They're not people that you want to be naked.
Yes. But that's another thing I like about Zombie, is that he's a real filmmaker. He's not, like, I tried to explain this to you earlier when I was saying how I kind of am appreciating his earlier films more. When I rewatched House of a Thousand Corpses, I kind of liked it a little bit more. In that he's not just trying to, like, entertain an audience for 90 minutes so they can, have fun on a date, go off and have dinner and then forget about it 20 minutes later. He's trying to really get under your skin and evoke a visceral reaction. He's trying to show you images that maybe don't even make sense in any kind of a linear plot, but that are going to kind of jar you out of your, everyday experience.
What was also creepy is that we watched it in an empty theater, too.
We did. We actually watched it in an empty
theater.
It did kind of add to it. Well, did you think this movie was genuinely scary?
I think it had a lot of frightening.
It had some creepy moments. I agree. Yeah, this is. I think this is his most effective.
I mean, I've talked about being afraid of like animals and stuff in horror movies, and this one uses that as well. It's really It's creeped out.
Yeah,
there's always a goat somewhere.
There's a goat, and
there's animal-ish things. You don't even see them. There's like a werewolf or something in it, and that scene's really creepy. where it appears behind her. You hear it growling.
This large beast, which I read as the devil, but again, there's so much of this movie that's not explained, that's not spelled out, which I think is a strength of the movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be rejected by a lot of audiences.
Well, if you take the time to sit and explain why evil wins, then you probably won't feel good about it at the end. Mm-hmm. You kind of need that question there to... Like, I don't know, maybe evil didn't win at the end. I'm not really quite sure. She's, like, playing with her dog at the end, and you kind of... Is that a flashback? You don't really know. But it's fine. Yeah. It works for the movie.
Yeah, I think it's important, like, to enjoy a film like this to the extent that we did. I think it's important that you need to be able to enjoy a movie outside of the plot. You need to be able to enjoy elements of it other than... Because the plot is so little. I mean, we've seen this story before. The story is Rosemary's Baby. But the style is something completely different. The images are something completely different. The last third of the movie, there's so little dialogue. It's just all these large operatic scenes. And you can't really summarize what's happening, what's not happening, what's real, what's illusion. But I was riveted right up until the end. It didn't seem over long to me.
I think maybe it did a little bit.
A little bit? You thought it dragged a bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if there's enough material to stretch it that far.
Yeah. Well, there really isn't in terms of plot, but I don't know, all these scenes. It reminded me of something like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Again, kind of a thin plot, but the pacing of it is drawn out in such a way that it's effective without being boring. At least for me, it was.
I wasn't bored by it. So yeah.
You thought it maybe could have been tightened up a little bit.
Yeah. I mean... Kind of the scenes right before the last operatic ending, maybe kind of were dragging on. I was kind of like, where are they going? I know they wanted me to be wondering where it's going, but you can kind of lose an audience's patience. At a certain point, and maybe it kind of got close to that line.
Yeah.
It kind of got close to it.
Yeah, for sure. Because this is definitely not an in-your-face blood and guts kind of like slasher or anything like that.
There's blood and guts.
There's a lot of blood and guts. There's a lot of just bizarre imagery, but this is a slow burn. I mean, it was so nice to have a Rob Zombie movie like take the time to like develop a character and have quiet scenes.
It was very refreshing to have.
It was very refreshing
to have, especially like that boyfriend.
Be just a regular nice guy.
Yeah.
Yep. He didn't have obnoxious slogans on his T-shirt. It wasn't like
he was an obnoxious radio host, like a morning zookeeper.
Yep. That's what I thought.
You're supposed to be.
That's what
he's off the air. He's a normal dude.
That's what I thought. Their personas on air, they sounded like how the characters in other Rob Zombie movies just sound like all the time. And I kind of felt like, well, him giving them that job let him, kind of scratch that itch, kind of get that kind of tone into the movie. But most of the movie was very quiet, very subdued, not a lot of dialogue. I don't know, I feel kind of proud of Rob Zombie, from kind of having followed him. Yeah. I mean, you were a fan of his before I was, but just kind of having seen him develop among his movies, I think I've always thought he's one of the more talented filmmakers working. I just kind of wished he would kind of put those talents to better use, and here I think that he has.
I kind of wonder what the next step is.
Yeah, I do too. I'm excited to see what he does next. Hopefully it won't be like another Halloween 2. Hopefully he'll keep moving forward.
Also, I really praised this movie, but also watched House of a Thousand Corpses too recently, and I think that's worth talking about.
It for sure is. One more thing I want to say about Lords of Salem. I feel like there's a lot to say about this movie and Rob Zombie in general. One thing I liked too was that it seemed to use a lot of... There's so much that I liked that made it stand apart from like a generic contemporary Hollywood horror movie made for teenagers. Think of something like Texas Chainsaw 3D. And one of the things that did, which we also like about Evil Dead, it seemed to use a lot of practical special effects to me. Did you kind of note that in the movie?
Absolutely.
I mean, even in like the creatures, they were creatures in suits, which is quaint by today's standards, but damn if it wasn't effective in this movie.
Yeah, there's a little
Danny
DeVito type of devil, a little midget guy. That was pretty freaky.
It was freaky.
When he enters the frame, there's like this big like boom, like you hear his feet like thud thud. You expect this huge thing, and it's this little guy just stands there. It's kind of like that clown from like Spawn or something, Yeah. It's really It's just a bizarre choice.
It was just something wrong about that image, and that's so true of a lot in this movie. And again, it's something that you can't explain what exactly that image was, what exactly that represented. I mean, I have ideas about it, you have ideas about it, but it's not definitively answered in that movie. Mm-hmm. And these are guys in suits, but it doesn't lessen the impact of seeing them on film. It just looked terrific. There really wasn't any kind of cheesy CGI or anything like that in the movie at all.
The effects I thought didn't work were like at the beginning when the light switch is flipped on and you see a naked ghost or whatever it was, a witch standing in the corner, and that's supposed to be like a jump. They do that like maybe 2 or 3 times, and it never seemed to work.
Yeah, there were definitely,
so that kind of seemed a little stock.
Yep, for sure. There were definitely moments that I agree with you on that point. There were moments that were really effective. There were moments that were less effective. But overall, this is Rob Zombie's best movie, and he's a great director. I kind of suspect this might not find much of an audience in a theatrical run. I mean, we were in an empty theater.
Could you tell from the audience?
We were but just the nature of the movie. Like just as I was watching especially the ending, I'm like, this is not the kind of movie American audiences like. You know what I mean? But I hope that it will find an audience, maybe once on DVD. Maybe theatrically, but people who really want a unique experience should seek it out. It's just refreshing on so many levels to see a horror movie with new ideas and new images.
And especially from a guy you follow for a while.
Yep, and yeah, absolutely. So, well, okay, so let's jump back now. This is his newest film, Lords of Salem. We also watched this afternoon in preparation, House of a Thousand Corpses, which you had traditionally been more of a fan of. And I didn't like it when I first saw it years ago. I revisited it, and actually I liked it a little bit more this time. You seem to not be as taken.
I kind of liked it a little less.
I think we kind of reversed our opinion on it.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the early Rob Zombie in general and House of a Thousand Corpses in particular today?
Oh, dude, it's relentless at a point.
That's a good way to describe it.
I was much younger when I saw it, so maybe I was more into that stuff, and maybe just matured since then, or I've seen way more types of horror films, but it wasn't that long. It was 2002, like 10 years ago or so. And
God, it's a long time ago already.
Yeah, it was. And it was just like, I remember it being a movie, like, I heard about it, I think even like in high school, that Rob Zombie's planning on making this movie. He had the title, and he couldn't get it made, and no studio wanted it, and like that made it sound really enticing.
I think you were more like into the horror scene at that point than I was. I was more interested in like different kinds of movies at that point, so I wasn't up on that kind of stuff.
But he loads those movies with everything, the kitchen sink, and it's just relentless. There's a certain point when there's not even a break between dialogue. When one person stops talking, the other person starts talking.
Yeah.
Or the next scene begins. It's all right. We arrive at the house. Right. Oh, there's someone outside. Right. Who's that? Right. It's this person. It's this. And it's just bouncing all over the place.
So House of a Thousand Corpses.
And the ironic thing is, there's not really a story there. So it's a lot of talk and there's nothing there.
I mean, House of a Thousand Corpses. It's really like, if you were gonna, it's very representative of Rob Zombie's style. It's kind of like perfectly representative of it, except for Lords of Salem. It's kind of a simple story, reminiscent of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This group of young people are out in kind of the backwoods, investigating, hoping to write a book about kind of quirky, odd roadside attractions. Sid Haig, is that his name is pronounced? Sid Haig plays this kind of devilish, clownish kind of character who runs one of these attractions.
He's probably the most appealing character, and that really is not saying a lot.
Yeah, the kids end up, they get a flat tire. They're captured by this, family of psychotic, freaks. And it's very Texas Chainsaw Massacre from there. This very twisted family just kind of torturing these kids throughout the course of the film. It gets very weird, though, at the end, and that's kind of the part I appreciated most about this movie was the ending. But everyone in this movie, and this is what I haven't liked about Rob Zombie, is just completely obnoxious It's just ugly, obnoxious characters doing horrible things to other ugly, obnoxious characters.
And he's talked about that, like he wants to see that on the screen. It's
deliberate.
That's just not for everybody.
Yeah, like it
wears on me. A lot of the time.
Yeah, it's just like every opportunity to use a curse word or put an obnoxious slogan on a T-shirt, or just every single moment of every single frame is just filled with just ugly, obnoxious, stuff, which I think, Zombie finds appealing and funny, and a lot of his fans obviously do too. I mean, House of a Thousand Corpses is something of a cult classic.
Yeah.
But it's for me, it's like it gets a little relentless after a while.
It does slow down at the end, but by then you're so... Oh, and also, with that one, because it is so relentless and basically silly, I mean, you could say it's not meant to be really scary.
Yeah, it's just
it's still kind of an homage to horror movies.
Very much so. The Rob Zombie's movies are basically just like everything he loves about horror movies, just like stuffed in there.
The annoying part was, though, then they try to do some like serious acting scenes and some serious drama. There's like the father who needs to go. He's like on the phone with the sheriff, and it's meant to be like a serious scene, and you're just like, whoa, where did this come from? Like, go away. Like, I don't want that in here. It's just like a complete mishmash of nothingness. I like Rob Zombie, and that's my review of...
Well, yeah, when we watched it, I was like, you were like kind of reacting negatively. I was like, do you even like this movie? Why do you own this movie?
I thought I did.
Yeah, well, everything has to be seen in context. And I think now that, maybe you've evolved as a film viewer, Rob Zombie has clearly evolved as a filmmaker. You've evolved a little bit. Maybe you don't hold it in as high of regard, but I do think as an early film, you can kind of see him learning what works and what doesn't a little bit. What I kind of now appreciate about it, though, is that just like I said, Rob Zombie he has a vision. He has an aesthetic. Even in something as silly and ultimately kind of pointless as House of a Thousand Corpses, he's still doing what he's doing in Lords of Salem. He's trying to put characters and images on the screen that, well, I want to say that people haven't seen before, even though, he lifts a lot of stuff kind of directly from other movies. But he's trying to kind of evoke some kind of a reaction in an audience.
But a lot of the stuff, like, that's from other movies wasn't the stuff that freaked me out. Like the original stuff is the stuff that freaked me out. So I think that's a real testament to his talent. Like, he doesn't take something because he thinks that's scary, so he's going to put it in his movie so it's still scary and it scares other people. He definitely captures this nightmare really well.
Yeah, I feel like I was most... Because what I didn't like about, House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects is, like, there's no character I care about. There's no one I can relate to. It's just all, like, images and loud and...
Yeah.
So, but knowing that going in the second time here, I sort of... The best way to experience a Rob Zombie movie, I think, is to just kind of give yourself over to that. To just kind of accept that this is not going to be a movie... I'm talking about the early Rob Zombie, put aside Lords of Salem, where you're going to be able to relate to the characters. Yeah. There's not going to be a slow build of tension. You just kind of have to give yourself over to these images that Rob Zombie wants to assault you with for 90 minutes. And if you can kind of put yourself in that mindset, there's something kind of enjoyable about watching the movie. And I thought House of a Thousand Corpses actually got better as it went along. I actually really liked the end sequence once the characters went down underground. And
really?
You find... Yeah, I actually did. And... I don't think what was going on there makes any kind of sense.
No, they're almost like zombies at a certain
Exactly.
point.
I don't think you can explain it by any kind of... they kind of set up the Dr. Satan stuff, but there's like a mad doctor with all these kind of like Victorian...
He looked like a Power Rangers villain, though.
Well, the guy that came after him, not the doctor, but...
Well, no, he kind of did too.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just... I guess for me it was like... It was so bizarre, and it was just like... It was kind of this everything but the kitchen sink mentality, which, on one hand I don't like, but on the other hand, I sort of appreciated it. I thought the characters, for me, I thought they kind of look cool. I know what you're saying, they look kind of like Power Rangers characters, but I don't know. There's something about that end sequence I like. The way that the sets were dressed and the underground cavern. It was just bunny suits. It was the bunny suits. It was just so weird. It was like, where is this coming from? What is the point of all this? I think a lot of what turned me off of it, like several years ago when I first saw it, I come to appreciate on a certain level when I watched it again. Am I making any sense as far as like?
No, I get it because I kind of think the same thing about why I like him and why I like a lot of directors is that they're fearless. They put in whatever. I'm gonna put in 50 naked old women at the beginning of my movie.
Yeah.
Now, to me, I love that kind of stuff.
You love looking at 50, naked old women.
Not the 50 naked old women, but I love the idea that he just tries anything. He's not kind of like, what's going to sell to an audience?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
And I thought that about Lords of Salem because there were things in there that I wouldn't put in. Like, I find, like, that's kind of a misstep. But, that was his choice, and he took it. So I don't expect their opinions to always line up with mine.
Yeah.
I think that's, I don't know.
Well,
and I think a hallmark of his and a lot of directors.
And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Sort of like a David Fincher, too. Kind of just really fearless. Put anything on the screen.
David Lynch is another filmmaker I thought of that this new movie reminded me of Lynch's stuff. But yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I've come to appreciate about like House of a Thousand Corpses is that he is just kind of like putting what he wants to see on the screen without necessarily considering... I mean, he's a filmmaker. He's trying to entertain. He's trying to make a living. He's trying to make money. But I mean, he's really, trying to just create like cool art. I think in his movies, and even though I maybe didn't connect with that art personally as much in his earlier films, I still appreciate that he was trying to do it, and I definitely connect to it more in Lords of Salem. So yeah, I was reading an interview with him in one of the horror magazines. I don't know if it's Fangoria or another one, and. One thing he talked about was like he's just really tired of movies having to make sense all the time. He's like, I'm just really bored with that. I'm really uninterested in that. And he'd talk about like some of the notes that he would get on Lords of Salem. And
I've heard interviews with him.
Yeah,
battling studios.
Yeah, and like some of the notes he would get on like Lords of Salem, they'd be like, well, who is this character? What is he doing here? You know what I mean? And I thought of them maybe making that note about the masked character who was walking the goat down the street. Yeah. Can you explain who that masked character was? No. What did he have to do with anything? What was he doing on the street? Was it a freaky image? Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think of The Shining. The scariest images in The Shining are completely unexplained.
And the bear costume.
Is that what it was?
Yep,
the weird bear costume in the room. My personal #1 most freaky horror movie moment of all time. Mm-hmm. You can't explain it, and it's kind of freakier because of that. And that's,
you wouldn't want to explain it. If someone gave me an explanation for that, I'd be like, I don't care. And don't detract from it.
And that's very true of David Lynch's films. They're kind of more horrifying for what you can explain and can understand, but there's something visceral about those images they're putting on the screen. So, yeah, I mean, I love Lords of Salem, and I kind of, like, am, in retrospect, starting to appreciate some of those earlier films that I was maybe a bit too dismissive of. So, yeah. So we didn't rewatch The Devil's Rejects. We've seen it before, but I don't remember it really well enough to really discuss it in depth. It's something of a sequel to House of a Thousand Corpses?
Sort of, yeah. It's a more serious take on it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's supposed to like pick up right after the first one. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't really. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really.
It stands on its own. I think I saw that one first, if I remember correctly.
It's almost like the beginning of... Well, I mentioned that in one of these other ones. It's like the beginning of the Texas Chainsaw 3D. Where they have all these characters in the house, and they're supposed to be all those characters from the previous movies, but you're like, I don't remember there being this person there, I don't remember this person being there. It's basically its own thing.
Sure.
It's relentless, although not so much. Even though it's more serious in tone, it's not as relentless as House of a Thousand Corpses. You don't get worn out watching it, or I didn't. I think you probably did more than I did. Mm-hmm. Again, there's not really a lot of a story there to it. Mm-hmm. It's just this band of this family traveling around killing people, which could be an interesting idea for a movie, but I remember it being really long. It's better than House of a Thousand Corpses, but it's way worse than Halloween, and it's a big step down from Lords of Salem. So if you only see two of his movies, see Halloween and Lords of Salem. I think Devil's Rejects is worth checking out, but I don't know. There's not a lot to say about it either. There's probably a reason why you don't remember a lot of it.
Well, I'm actually I'd be curious to look at it again though now in my kind of reappraisal of the early Rob Zombie. But
after House of Thousand Corpses and not liking it as much, I'm afraid to go back and visit it. I think maybe I'll just leave it be.
Yeah, let it be. Just
I remember in my memory, like I like it, so I'll leave that one alone.
Well, Rob Zombie is not a perfect filmmaker. He's definitely a talented filmmaker, and if leaving aside Halloween 2, he's been kind of on an upward trajectory.
That's one I have nothing to say about.
Yeah, Halloween 2 was just really unfortunate. But you and I both like Halloween. Some people don't like that one, but. I thought he did a good job with it. So, it's just a great filmmaker, and I'm really glad we were able to see this new movie. We originally had planned to do something completely different for this episode of Brain Says Strange Things, and at the last minute, we realized that this movie, which is in limited release right now, was playing at our local theater.
That's sad, because it's like, this is a movie that I was excited about. I saw the previews for it. I thought the trailer looked cool. I'm a big Rob Zombie fan. I didn't even know about it. The movie's out already. I didn't even know about it.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know that this is going to connect to American audiences.
It won't, but it didn't even connect to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't advertise to me at all.
Maybe the studio's kind of lost faith and they're kind of pulling back their marketing on it or something. But who knows? But it is a good movie. Well, good thing we're doing this podcast so we can alert people that it is out there in theaters.
Go see it.
Definitely check it out because I really enjoyed it. So go in with an open mind. Go in expecting something different from...
Go in with an open mind and an empty crowd.
Yes.
There's probably nobody else that is going to see this movie, but
well, I mean, I don't know.
Maybe it'll catch on.
The horror fans might come out for it. I mean, it's
been better.
But yeah, going with an open mind, going expecting something different from what you've seen before from Rob Zombie, and also something different than what you're probably going to see in other movies. It's just a really kind of unique film-going experience. I thought it was really good.
Yep.
So. Yeah, right on. All right, well, so there we go. A little kind of last-minute Rob Zombie-themed episode of Brain Says Strange Things. Any final thoughts on Rob Zombie? Or
I feel like I've exhausted my limited knowledge of Rob Zombie.
There we go. All right, well, next time on Brain Says Strange Things, something completely different. We're working on a show that we've been prepping for a while that we're both pretty excited about. So I think that'll be our next episode in hopefully a couple weeks. We'll get that up. Thanks as always for watching, and we will be back soon. Bye now.
Bye.